Trench Talk, 1-hour session. This session has been recorded and is included in the statewide Safety Fest, March 9th through 11th, 2021. Today's course is led by Eli Rickert. Eli has been with Key Rentals Group since they opened the doors in 2018, gaining knowledge of the construction industry. Her background is in oil, lumber, and the auto industries. Her love from the outdoors brought her to Montana, and she is very optimistic and looks forward to helping the community stay safe with the resources that Key Rentals Group provides. Thank you for teaching today's course, Eli. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Eli Rickert with Key Rentals Group. We're a trench rental company over in Belgrade, Montana, and we mainly specialize in trench safety. We've been in business for a little over 2 years, and we are growing and expanding into surrounding states, which is pretty awesome. I've been with the company since the beginning. So that being said, I know a lot of you have way more experience than I do. So I'm not going to sit here and act like I know everything, but my job today is to take you through an overview of the standard. So again, this is an overview of the standard. When we do our competent person training, we do take you start to finish of the OSHA excavation standard. So something that I've emailed everyone. So everyone should have gotten this right here. This is our quick reference guide. So this right here has all of the key points of the standard. So basically it's everything broken down in an easy to read and hopefully easy to not lose pamphlet. Something that we do supply when we do our competent person training is this OSHA excavation standard manual. So this is something that we have rewritten just to make it, easy to read, because OSHA can be a bit tricky. So it has everything that you need to know, and it also has a really nice table of content, so you'll be able to, use it quickly. We do sell these, so if this is something that you're interested in, you can email me at eli@keyrentalsgroup.com, or you can just head over right to our booth and just let me know. They're $8 plus shipping. So, and then something else that I've sent you guys is if you do want to take our competent person class, there's information on that as well as our equipment list. So what I want you to take from this class is just to have a good understanding of the standard, good understanding of soil, and good understanding of protective systems, and just know that you should never get into an unprotected trench. So here's just a really good example of why it just truly pays to be safe. So in 2018, these are all of the people that got tickets from OSHA. So as you can see, protection of employees in excavations, 797 people got a ticket. Means of egress from trench excavations, 380 people. Protection of employees from loose rock, 310. Daily inspections of excavations, 277. Where a competent person finds evidence of a situation that could result in a cave-in, 100 people, and protection from hazards associated with water accumulation, about 50. So here's just a fun pop quiz just to get the ball rolling. So this is the trenching by numbers. This is actually in your trench and excavation quick reference guide that I sent over. Okay, what is the depth at which a protective system, so a trench shield, shoring, or sloping, is mandatory? So that is 5 feet. What is the distance in inches below the top of a trench shield where a slope begins when used in a slope shield combination? So that is 18 inches, and that's only when you do the slope shield, just to catch any of that runoff. What is the minimum distance in feet a ladder must extend above the trench shoring, trench shielding, and/or grade? The answer is 3 feet. What is the depth at which fall protection is required? 6 feet. What is the level at which oxygen concentration is classified as oxygen deficient atmosphere? 19.5. Whoa. So you can see right here, what is the level at which oxygen concentration is classified as oxygen enriched atmosphere? So that's 23.5. What is the maximum distance in feet a worker may travel to reach a ladder or means of egress? 25 feet. Alrighty, so this right here is the standard broken down, and this is what a competent person is going to be responsible for. So they're going to be responsible for surface encumbrances, underground installations, exposure to vehicular traffic, exposure to falling loads, warning system for mobile equipment, hazardous atmospheres, protection from hazards associated with water accumulation, stability of adjacent structures, protection of employees from loose rock or soil, inspections daily, fall protection, and access and egress. All right, and here's just a quick little video to show you that this job site can go a bit sideways.
Who's in charge today? Huh? Who's in charge today? How you doing? I'm in the state of Oregon, Oregon OSHA. Looks like you got a little bit of a shoring problem going on.
That's it. That's what we're installing right now.
Well, he can't be down there.
Okay.
How are you going to get him out?
Shoring or what? Jim, just unhook that thing. Sorry. Watch it.
You want to see why he can't be down there?
What?
That's why he can't be down there.
Okay, still sheets have got to go in.
Okay, you got to get him out. And I hope you get him out soon.
Go.
How long you guys been working here?
About 3 hours.
Okay. How deep are you there?
About 21 feet.
Holy smokes, huh? So that's just to show it's not a matter of if you're going to have a potential cave-in, it's just a matter of when, depending on what soil type you're in. So that's really important why we're going over stuff like this. All right, so what is a competent person? So a competent person is going to be able to identify trenching hazards, is authorized to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate hazards, and has stop work authority. That is very important. Is responsible for daily trenching inspections prior to the start of work and throughout the day. Again, super important. Is knowledgeable about soils, protective systems, and OSHA rules. Determines which protective systems to use. And the competent person must be designated by their employer. So that right there is kind of like our disclaimer. So it's my job to take you through the standard, but I cannot make you a competent person. That is up to your employer. And okay, some of these things are going to be repetitive, but that just means that they're very important, okay? So a competent person, ultimately, it's your employer's responsibility to train and designate an individual as a competent person. Without that training and authorization, a person is not considered a competent person. Okay, so one more time, really let it sink in. OSHA requires the presence of a competent person during that activity. And OSHA defines a competent person as one who is capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards in surroundings or working conditions which are unsanitary, hazardous, or dangerous to employees, and has the authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them. So it's really nice to understand these OSHA rules, but OSHA is not black and white. So if you ever have any questions about the standard in any way, you can always contact us, or you can actually just contact OSHA. So I actually have right here, I had a guy message OSHA because he was a bit confused because it said the competent person must be present during the activity. So he thought this was a gray area, so he reached out to OSHA. And OSHA says, the competent person can leave the job site periodically consistent with the goals of this section. It is the responsibility of a competent person to make those inspections necessary to identify situations that could result in a hazardous condition. And then to ensure that corrective measures are taken, it is therefore subject to the conditions present at each individual work site, whether or not a competent person is required at the job site at all times. So this is OSHA saying, hey, it totally depends. Every situation is different. So again, it's not black and white. Some things you really have to, make sure that you're aware of your surroundings if you are the competent person. All right. So this is our whole class broken down. So you've got the problem. We're going to talk about soils. We have stable rock, type A, type B, and type C that we'll get into here in just a bit. So the solution is going to be your protective systems. So if you're going to slope or bench, so that's physically removing the problem, which is the soil. You've got shoring. This is going to prevent cave-ins from occurring. And shielding. This is going to protect the workers, but it's not necessarily going to prevent a cave-in. And then the standard is the law. So what we're talking about, this all boils down to this right here. So as a competent person, you're going to be able to recognize trenching hazards, choose protective systems for trenches, and identify hazards and take preventative measures for activities associated with excavation. So hopefully by now, everyone knows what a competent person is. So approximately 30 workers die and 1,000 are injured per year in excavation cave-ins. So some of those causes are no protective systems, failure to inspect, unsafe spoil pile placement, and unsafe access and egress. This is so sad because all of this can be avoided, but it happens, and that's why we're here today. So here is a really good video on a recovery and how they worked through a cave-in. So this is a really motivating video. Here we go.
Now, we're going to take you through an ordeal that few people ever survive. The man whose story we bring you now is one of the lucky ones. For 15 hours, his fate was uncertain as he lay immobilized, the life slowly being crushed out of his body. His rescue was dramatic, as you'll see. But as Deborah Roberts discovered, that was only the beginning of his inspiring story.
Imagine being at the bottom of this shaft, 20 feet down, trapped under thousands of pounds of earth. You can hear people frantically trying to reach you, but you can't see a thing and you can't move. You're cold, wet, and your body is being crushed under a weight as heavy as a Mack truck. You are buried alive. That unimaginable nightmare happened to this man, 26-year-old Darby Patrick, and he survived. It's a story of incredible luck, tremendous skill, and personal courage.
It was painful down there, cold, wet, miserable there. I knew 20 20 foot of dirt. Ain't no way you're going to get out of that. I thought it was dead.
His amazing battle against death began last December 14th along this quiet stretch of highway in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was 1 in the afternoon, and he was laying sewer pipe with his construction crew in a deep trench like this one, when suddenly, without warning, the dirt walls caved in on top of him.
911. A man buried on Highway 58.
My back was only turned from him a second, and when I turned back around, Darby was covered up.
I knew you had about 3 or 4 minutes to make it if you were buried 4 foot deep from the chest down, and I didn't think there was going to be no hope at all.
Darby was trapped near the bottom of the trench, almost 20 feet down, stuck with his arms outstretched and his legs pulled apart. He should have suffocated within minutes, but amazingly, he was still breathing. That's because he was pinned with his face right next to the open end of the pipe he'd been installing and was getting air. He began screaming for help.
That's how they knew I was still there, still alive there.
Could you feel anything at all, Darby?
Not at first, I'm just paralyzed. I mean, I couldn't move nothing at all. And that's the scariest part right there.
And I knew the only chance he had of survival was me digging him out, digging dirt off of him. So I dug a lot of dirt off Darby.
Philip Wills, Darby's boss and best friend, was frantic. He knew that as the seconds ticked away, so did Darby's chances for survival. Using a backhoe like this one, Wills desperately began scooping the soil out of the trench, but he stopped when he saw something that frightened him.
One of the other boys lost his hard hat in the ditch, and when I pulled his hard hat up, I thought it was Darby's. Because, see, you risk the danger of cutting somebody's head off when you take the dirt off of it.
Paramedic Danny Haig was on the scene within minutes. He quickly learned that the victim he was coming to help was buried under 5 feet of earth and had now grown silent.
We were beginning to wonder whether or not it was actually a rescue or a recovery.
And you were thinking that it was going to be a recovery of a body at that time?
Yeah, after that long period of time without hearing anything, we figured it ended up being a recovery before it was over with.
Above ground, they were about to give up hope when somehow Darby found the strength to shout for help again. The fight to save him continued. By 5 o'clock, it was already dark and the temperature began dropping.
Just let him come around over here on this side.
Dozens of rescue workers poured in from all over Tennessee and Georgia. On the sidelines, Darby's wife of 2 years, Julie, waited anxiously, clinging to hope.
That was the hardest part, not knowing what was going to happen.
It was a desperate race against time, carried out in slow motion. Rescuers dug gingerly with hand shovels and hauled dirt and rock to the surface, bucket by bucket. They used a high-pressure air chisel and eventually brought in a giant vacuum truck to help with the excavation. It was dangerous for all involved.
Everybody okay down there?
To prevent a second cave-in, rescuers built a wooden support structure to protect them and Darby in the unstable trench.
They had to dig for a while and then shore down to where they're digging. Dig some more, shore down to where they're digging. Some things just cannot go fast in this type of situation with safety.
Dr. Jim Creel, an emergency specialist, was the first doctor on the scene.
When I got there, I could look through the hole and see this man's scalp, and I talked to him at that time.
How surprised were you that he was talking and alert?
I was, quite frankly, surprised seeing the amount of dirt that was covering him.
At 7:30, 6 hours into the rescue attempt, Darby's face and one arm were partially exposed, but the rest of his body was still pinned. Dr. David Wharton was sent into the trench to help, but he thought Darby had little chance of making it.
I just had never been involved in anything that had gone on for 3 or 4 hours where somebody was completely covered up and they had survived.
Dr. Wharton, seen here in the purple jacket, knew Darby was now in danger of dying from hypothermia, the loss of body heat, especially as the temperature dipped to 30 degrees. So he started him on heated IV fluid and oxygen, keeping him warm and medicated.
He didn't have good feeling in his legs, but other areas he was having a significant amount of pain to where we were giving him frequent doses of morphine.
The painstaking rescue effort continued hour after hour into the early morning. By now, 150 rescuers were focusing on saving one man. Paramedic Danny Haig risked his own life in the trench, trying to keep Darby's hopes up.
I spent several hours laying there on the bottom of the trench face to face holding his hand. He was surprisingly upbeat, in good spirits the whole time he was down there.
At 4:45 a.m., success.
Everybody out.
After nearly 16 hours of terror and pain, Darby was finally freed and raised from the trench.
Stop!
I can remember a lot of people hollering.
You got the O2 tank?
You could hear the cheering?
Yes, but then at once they put me in an ambulance, and I don't remember nothing until about 2 months later.
When you could see him being freed, what did you think?
Thank God. You know, I just figured he'd come out, nothing wrong with him, because he was just joking and laughing and carrying on. But when they got him out, that's when things got kind of, for the worst.
In fact, as an ambulance rushed Darby to a helicopter, doctors knew something that onlookers did not. Darby was probably going to die. The very act of freeing him from the trench and releasing the crushing pressure meant he was now a victim of crush syndrome.
Whenever you put pressure on the muscles for a long period of time, it makes them so they're not able to get oxygen. And eventually they die. And when they die, they start releasing acid and potassium,
which sets off a chain reaction, which builds more, and the byproduct or the end product of the chain reaction is poison. Okay, see you later.
Trauma surgeon Dr. Charles Rickert, an expert in crush syndrome, was waiting for Darby in the emergency room at Erlanger Hospital 15 miles away. He was worried.
The problem with this is it's a time bomb. They get him out of the hole, the compression's released, and all of these factors are now released to the rest of the system.
So when the pressure came off Darby, the real trouble began.
Kickoff. From the medical standpoint, you go from waiting to help to assuming the role of the monster because you want to have to bring them the news about what's about to start happening.
And it was not going to be good news.
No, it wasn't very good news at all.
Darby was now in critical condition. He had suffered massive crush injuries on more than half of his body. The intense pressure destroyed most of the muscles below his waist, producing poisons that were about to cause multiple organ failure.
I did not have a good feeling about him. When I talked to his wife, I gave Darby less than a 10% chance of surviving at that time.
I just wanted him to be alive. Then they said his left leg was crushed, and they were going to have to take his left leg.
Did he have a choice about the leg?
No, man, not. He had a choice to live or die with his leg. And that was it.
Darby's entire left leg was amputated. That was just the start of his battle to survive in the hospital's trauma unit. He would undergo more than 70 surgeries and skin grafts.
He had liver damage. He had kidney failure. He had heart trouble. They thought they were going to take his other leg.
For every step forward that you take 2 steps back.
He drifted in and out of consciousness for nearly 3 months. For Julie, it was a lonely time. She feared she would be left alone to raise the couple's 1-year-old son, Preston.
I'd go in to see him every day. I'd holler at him, "You keep fighting, you hear me, you keep being strong."
Darby did keep fighting, and by March, his astonished doctors realized he would recover. A recovery expected by no one who rescued him or treated him.
But I felt like the hand of God had to be on him. For him to have, one, beaten the odds initially, where 99% or so of people die immediately, he survived. And then to survive each step of the way.
But now came a different kind of struggle, maybe the toughest of all, learning to function with his amputation and injuries.
Oh, we're going a minute and a half.
With help from the staff at Atlanta's Shepherd Center, a rehabilitation hospital, he pushed himself to the limit, slowly reclaiming his life.
His prognosis in the future is very good because of Darby.
Just reach maybe 4 times. 1.
He's got an incredible spirit and a resolve that this is inspiring. It really is.
5.5 months after the accident, a celebration. Friends and neighbors welcome home a living miracle.
I have a lot of pain still, but just being with my wife and little son, it makes it all worth it. I mean, being with them, you forget about the pain.
Today, along Highway 58, there is little sign of the heroic struggle that took place on that frigid December night. But the man who lived through it will never forget what it took to face death and triumph over the odds.
Every day I live is one day I didn't have, the way I see it. I don't take nothing for granted no more.
Darby Patrick's doctors continue to be amazed at his spirit and his progress 8 months after being buried alive. He's already moving around on crutches and being fitted for an artificial leg, and Darby tells us next month he plans to compete in an annual road race in Tennessee, 3 kilometers in his wheelchair. We'll be right back.
Wow, he was so lucky. All right. Hey guys, so what's an excavation and what's a trench? Like, are they the same thing? What's going on here? So an excavation is any man-made cut, depression, or trench by removing the earth. And a trench is a narrow excavation that is deeper than it is wide, but no greater than 15 feet at the bottom. All trench walls will eventually fail. Okay, think of it this way. So like if you get a cut, you're gonna start to bleed, right? But your body is gonna start to form a scab. This is what the earth is going to do. It's not a matter of if it's gonna happen, it's just a matter of when, and that's gonna be determined by the soil types. Okay. So what is a cave-in really? It's a separation of soil or rock from the side of the trench so the materials can fall in. Sudden movements could potentially cause one. Gravity pushing soil downwards can cause a cave-in. So what are some of the consequences of a cave-in? So cave-ins can entrap, bury, injure, or otherwise immobilize a person. You could suffocate. The soil could prevent your chest from expanding. Crush syndrome, so buildup of toxins within the body by restricting blood flow and other bodily fluids, thus poisoning your body. So this is what the doctor was really worried about with Darby, but fortunately Darby was okay. Okay, soil classifications. So soil is classified into different types, and each type requires a certain protective system. And the competent person must determine that soil type. So some of the classifications are stable rock. So we're not even going to go over stable rock. Only 2% of the US is made up by that. So we're just going to skip that and go over types A, B, and C. Well, OSHA is. Here's a really amazing video from OSHA that does a good job, describing the different types of soil as well as how to classify them. So here we go.
In the U.S., more than 800 construction workers die every year while on the job. One of the most dangerous types of construction work is trenching, which kills 40 construction workers every year. Workers can suffer death or serious injury within minutes of being caught in a trench cave-in. But these deaths can be prevented. The video you're about to see shows one of the steps, classifying soil, that employers must follow so that trenching work can be done safely. This video is not intended to be a complete educational tool. Instead, it is meant as an introduction for people who want to know more. Employers have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace and required protective equipment. You'll learn how having the right information about a construction site can help save lives. Each employee who enters a trench must be protected from cave-ins by a protective system if the excavation is 5 feet or greater in depth, unless it is dug into stable rock. A support system is not required if the trench is less than 5 feet in depth. An examination of the ground by a competent person provides no indication of a potential cave-in. 1 cubic yard of soil can weigh as much as a car, 3,000 pounds, and comes in many varieties. Some types of soil are stable and some are not. When digging a trench, it's important to know the type of soil you're working with so you know how to properly slope, bench, or shore the trench. This can help prevent a cave-in. OSHA requires that employers have a competent person to determine the soil type. A competent person is someone who can identify conditions that are hazardous to employees and who also has the authorization to correct these hazards. All trenches that are 5 feet or deeper must follow OSHA's rules. The appendices of the OSHA excavation standard show the various types of support systems that may be used, up to a maximum depth of 20 feet. Any excavation deeper than 20 feet must use a protective system approved by a professional engineer. For all excavations, a competent person must conduct a full investigation every day, or when any trench conditions change, to identify and remove any potential hazards. In this video, you'll see how a visual inspection of a construction site soil is performed. You will also see how to test the soil using 3 of the most common methods: the plasticity test, the thumb penetration test, and the pocket penetrometer test. For best results, OSHA recommends that the competent person use more than one of these methods to test the soil. Knowing the type of soil makes it possible to determine the right protective system to keep workers safe when they're working in an excavation. Soil can either be cohesive or granular. Cohesive soil contains fine particles and enough clay so that the soil will stick to itself. The more cohesive the soil, the more clay it has, and the less likely a cave-in will happen. Granular soils are made of coarse particles, such as sand or gravel. This type of soil will not stick to itself. The less cohesive the soil, the greater the measures needed to prevent a cave-in. OSHA uses a measurement called unconfined compressive strength to classify each type of soil. This is the amount of pressure that will cause the soil to collapse. This value is usually reported in units of tons per square foot. Soils can be classified as Type A, Type B, or Type C. Type A soil is the most stable soil in which to excavate. Type C is the least stable soil. It's important to remember that a trench can be cut through more than one type of soil. Let's look at each type of soil. Type A soil is cohesive and has a high unconfined compressive strength, 1.5 tons per square foot or greater. Examples of Type A soil include clay, silty clay, sandy clay, and clay loam. Soil cannot be classified as Type A if it is fissured, if it has been previously disturbed, if it has water seeping through it, or if it is subject to vibration from sources such as heavy traffic or pile drivers. Type B soil is cohesive and has often been cracked or disturbed, with pieces that don't stick together, as well as Type A soil. Type B soil has medium unconfined compressive strength, between 0.5 and 1.5 tons per square foot. Examples of Type B soil include angular gravel, silt, silt loam, and soils that are fissured or near sources of vibration, but could otherwise be Type A. Type C soil is the least stable type of soil. Type C includes granular soils in which particles don't stick together, and cohesive soils with a low unconfined compressive strength, 0.5 tons per square foot or less. Examples of Type C soil include gravel and sand. Because it is not stable, soil with water seeping through it is also automatically classified as Type C soil, regardless of its other characteristics. Before testing the soil, it's useful to perform a visual test of the construction site. This will help determine if there are factors on site that will lower the strength of the soil. Here are some observations to make when performing a preliminary visual test of the soil around an excavation site. First, as the soil is being excavated, does it come out in clumps or is it granular? Clumps mean that the soil is cohesive. Are there sources of vibration near the excavation? Are there signs of previously disturbed soil, such as utility lines? Are there signs of water seeping through the soil? Is the soil fissured? Signs of fissuring include crack-like openings or chunks of soil that crumble off the side of a vertical excavation wall. If any of these conditions are met, the soil cannot be classified as Type A. When performing a soil test, it's important to choose a good soil sample. Soil samples should be typical of the surrounding soil in the excavation, and additional samples should be taken as the excavation gets deeper. While the excavation wall is one place to take samples, OSHA recommends taking a large clump from the excavated pile. as long as the soil in the pile is fresh and hasn't been compacted. Test results can change as the soil dries out, so for the best results, samples should be taken and tested as soon as practical. Now let's look at the three main types of soil tests. The plasticity test, which is sometimes called the pencil test, is used to determine if the soil is cohesive. This test is performed by rolling a moist soil sample into a thread that's 1/8 of an inch thick and 2 inches long, resembling a short, slim pencil. If the sample can be held at one end without breaking, it is cohesive. Here's an example of what the results will look like if the soil is cohesive. Notice how the sample stays in one piece. Now look at what happens when the soil is not cohesive. The soil doesn't have the strength to hold itself together. Any soil that is not cohesive is automatically classified as Type C, although some Type C soils are cohesive. The thumb penetration test is used to quickly estimate the compressive strength of a cohesive soil sample. To perform the thumb penetration test, simply press the end of your thumb into a fresh clump of soil. If the soil sample is Type A, your thumb will only make an indentation in the soil with great effort, as you can see demonstrated here. If the soil sample is Type B, your thumb will sink into the soil up to the end of your thumbnail, just like this. If the soil sample is Type C, your thumb will sink all the way into the soil clump, as you can see here. Your results for this test will probably be somewhere in between these results. For a more numeric measurement, the pocket penetrometer test can be used. A soil's compressive strength can be given a numeric value by using the pocket penetrometer test. There can be some variability in these results, so it's a good idea to run this test on a few soil samples from the same part of the excavation, just to make sure your results are consistent. A pocket penetrometer works much like a tire pressure gauge. A thin metal piston is pushed into a soil sample, and the penetrometer records the compressive strength of the soil. Be sure that the scale indicator is inserted into the penetrometer body until only the 0 mark is showing. To conduct the test, push the piston into the soil until it reaches the engraved line. Then simply take the reading from the scale indicator. It's important to recognize that a penetrometer may give false results if the soil contains rocks or pebbles, which won't compress. As you can see, Type A soil will measure at least 1.5 tons per square foot. Be aware, however, that you can't classify a soil as Type A if the excavation site didn't meet all the conditions of the visual test. If it is granular, near a source of vibration, or there are signs of previously disturbed soil, water seepage, or fissured soil. For Type B soil, the reading will be between 0.5 and 1.5 tons per square foot. Type C soils are equal to or less than 0.5 tons per square foot. Let's review the main points from the video. OSHA classifies soils into three main groups: Type A, Type B, and Type C. Type A is the most stable, and Type C is the least stable soil. To determine the soil type on a construction site, there are several tests that a competent person can use. After performing a visual test, you can use the plasticity test to determine if the soil is cohesive or granular. For cohesive soil, the thumb penetration and pocket penetrometer tests help determine the unconfined compressive strength. Determining the type of soil on a site will help a competent person decide which methods of sloping, benching, or shoring are needed to prevent cave-ins and keep workers safe. For more information, visit the OSHA website at www.osha.gov, where you can read the OSHA Excavation Standard, or use OSHA's Construction e-tool for trenching and excavation. You can also contact OSHA at 1-800-321-OSHA. That's 1-800-321-6742.
So that was really informative. And what I enjoy about OSHA is if you do have questions, you can always reach out, you know? Okay, so moving on. Soil stability. So a cubic foot of soil weighs about 150 pounds. So that's like me just fallen on top of you at a trench. That is going to hurt, okay? A cubic yard weighs about 3,000 pounds. So that's like a punch bug just coming in hot. That's going to be devastating. So water saturation, this can also make the soil really unstable. Cohesiveness, this is how well that soil is going to stick together. And unconfined compression strength, we just learned about it in the video, but this determines when the soil will fail under pressure and is measured in tons per square foot, and that's measured by that pocket penetrometer. Okay, so type A soil. So this is the most stable soil out there. It is very, very tough to find, and here's why. It's cohesive soil with an unconfined compression strength of 1.5 tons per square foot or more. It's cohesive soil that's predominantly clay. It can have no fissures, so no cracks, and it cannot be subject to vibration, and it cannot be previously disturbed. So again, super tricky to find. Type B soil is cohesive soil with an unconfined compression strength of 0.6 but greater than 1.5 tons per square foot. It's granule cohesiveless soil. This can be previously disturbed soil except otherwise classified as type C. So basically this is type A soil that does have those cracks and fissures, and that has been subject to vibration. So type C soil is cohesive soil with an unconfined compression strength of less than 0.5 tons per square foot. So it's granular soil, so that's going to be like, gravel and sand. It can be submerged soil or soil with seeping water. Obviously, that water must be controlled before you get into the trench. It can have sloped layer systems of materials, and it can have steeply sloped materials. So there are two different types of type C soil, and it's really important when you're that competent person to know which type of soil you're working in. So this right here is considered C80 soil, okay? So and you cannot have hydraulic shores in type C80 soil. So if you know how to classify it, you can figure out if it's C60 soil, which is cohesive soil with the UCS of less than 0.5 tons per square foot. Granular soil includes gravel and sands. It cannot, so this is where the only difference between type C80 and C60. So this cannot have submerged, it can't have water in it at all. And you can use aluminum hydraulic shores with the OSHA approved backing. So the same thing as the type C80 soil. This is just really nice to know, because if you can get by with aluminum hydraulic shores, it's going to be a lot lighter to use, and it's going to be less expensive to use, because trench boxes can get pretty pricey. So some of the soil tests, some of the most common ones are the plasticity test, the thumb penetration test, and the pocket penetrometer. So all the stuff that we went over in that OSHA video. So what are some signs of soil distress? So fissures or cracks in the trench wall or behind the excavation and in adjacent areas. The walls of trench slumps or falls. Soil can bulge or heave. Excavation edges can sink in, and material can trickle down into the excavation. All right, so some other causes are nearby vibrating machinery, nearby moving heavy loads, seeping water or rain, hot, dry weather. So weather can change the soil classification, which might then change what type of protective system you're going to use. So that's why it's really important to do those daily inspections and inspect after any weather changes. So there's only 3 types of trench protective systems out there. There's sloping and benching, so that's physically removing the problem, which is our soil. There's shoring, that's going to prevent the cave-ins by pushing up against the walls and kind of holding that trench up. And then shielding, which is going to protect the workers, but it's not necessarily going to prevent a cave-in. So let's see. So sloping and benching. So these diagrams right here, you can find them on OSHA's website, or we also have them in the manual. These diagrams are only good up to 20 feet. After 20 feet, you do need site-specific engineering, and that's something that we can help you out with also. So what is sloping? Sloping is going to angle the walls at an incline. So benching, it's a series of steps and angled walls, so kind of like, you know, steps up towards, up out of the trench. So the soil types are determined, so the soil types determine what your angle is going to be. So type A is sloped 3/4 to 1, type B soil is sloped 1 to 1, and type C soil is sloped 1.5 to 1. Alrighty, so what is hydraulic shoring? So this is going to support the walls of that trench to prevent that cave-in. So the components, you've got your vertical rails that are going to be against the trench, and then you're going to have these hydraulic cylinders that with pressure are going to press up against to hold that wall up. And depending on what type of soil, you may or may not need OSHA approved backing. So anytime you rent or purchase hydraulic shoring, it's going to come with tab data. So tabulated data is the engineered manufacturing way to use the product. So here it's just showing you in what type of soil, how far you can dig, and if you do need the approved backing. And then this is just a quick little kind of easy how to get it in and out. So shielding. So shielding is going to withstand forces of a cave-in and protect employees within. So they're portable. They're also called trench boxes. That's what we call them. And they must be installed to prevent lateral movement. Ideally, you want 6 inches on both sides of that shield. The 6-inch rule is so important. If there is a cave-in, the trench box is going to remain upright and it's going to be able to protect those workers. But if there's too much room, then when a cave-in does happen, the trench box can be knocked over and it's not going to protect those workers. And the tab data, just like the hydraulic shoring, this is going to tell you the soil types and what the box depth is rated to. So the tab data is also going to have serial numbers for the box that you're working with, and you want to make sure that both sides of that trench box match. Oops. Okay, so our shields are designed to withstand certain lateral forces. So the lateral pressure of the shield is greatest at the bottom. This lateral pressure is also dependent on the type of soil being excavated. So the weaker the soil, the greater the lateral pressure. The box and the depth at which the shield can be used to withstand that type of soil. So that's why it's so important to have that tab data and know how much stress the box can handle. So all trench boxes come with tabulated data and they need to be on the job site when being installed. So when used in a slope shield combination, you have to have 18 inches of roll-off protection, and that's only good up to 20 inches. So this 18-inch rule only applies when you're using that slope shield combination. So no one's permitted inside when being installed, removed, or moved vertically. This is a gray area, okay? It does not say anywhere that if it's moved horizontally, you have to get out of the box. I would just get out of the box. I mean, there's no, just common sense. But again, if you ever have questions, you can get a hold of OSHA. And someone actually did have a question about that 18-inch rule. They wrote in saying like, hey, if I'm digging, whoa, let's go back. Oh my gosh. So if I'm digging a trench box and I'm not using a slope, do I still need 18 inches? Again, some of these things are gray areas, some things are black and white, but if you don't know, it's just really nice to ask, okay? So OSHA just wrote back saying, no, the standard does not require trench shields to extend above grade, that is above the top level of being excavated. Only when you're using a slope shield combination. And as you can see right here, any roll off is going to catch, so it's not going to fall into that trench. Alrighty, so hazardous atmospheres. At excavations near sewers, landfills, and other potential hazardous atmospheres, you're going to want to test the atmosphere, and you want to test it at 4 feet in depth. You want to have ventilation if there's an issue. Use the proper PPE and maintain rescue and emergency equipment on site. Okay, for me, this is totally a gray area, right? So this only says near sewers and such. But if you think that there's a chance of a hazardous atmosphere, just test it. It really does not hurt, and it could definitely save your life. So adjacent structures are determined by the soil type and the area within the required slope. So if you're in type C soil and you're 10 feet deep, the adjacent site will equal the width of the trench plus 15 feet from the edge of each side of the trench. So you really want to be aware of where you're digging. Excavations might endanger stability of buildings, walls, other structures. Sidewalks and pavements must not be undermined unless supported to prevent collapse onto excavation workers. Use shoring, bracing, or underpinning to ensure stability of nearby structures. So water accumulation is definitely a drowning hazard. Always remove water slowly from a trench. So you want to do this because you don't want to shock that trench. So if you quickly take all the water out, it's going to cave in. So if you remove it slowly, it's going to keep some of that structure that you're wanting. So use precautions. Use special shoring and shielding. Use water removal systems, and use a safety harness and a lifeline. So trenches 4 feet or deeper must have access and egress within 25 feet of workers. So access and egress include, means ladders. They must extend 3 feet above that excavation as well, because that is going to give you enough room to get in and out of off of that ladder safely and have someone hold it too. Ladders must always be in the trench. Some stairways are another form, and sloped ramps. So again, somebody thought this was a gray area, so I just kind of wanted to show you guys. So right here in this handout, somebody wrote in asking if they could have an attendant at the top and just kind of put the ladder in the trench whenever they needed it. And OSHA responded with a big no. So they said if a cave-in were to occur, it would be too late. The ladder needs to stay in the trench at all times. Sorry if it's in the way, but it's the law, and the law is made to keep you safe. So some other trenching issues are underground utilities. So in Montana, you can call 811, and within 48 hours, someone will be there to monitor. Stay away from lifting and digging equipment. Use warning systems or barricades. Wear proper PPE. So use fall protection systems. They're required at 6 feet in depth or 30 inches or wider. No work above other workers. Always monitor excavation work. So you want to inspect, but the competent person is responsible for inspecting before work starts, throughout the shift, and after rainstorms. Inspect for evidence of possible cave-ins, indications of failure to protective systems, potential hazardous atmospheres, and remove workers if a hazardous condition exists. So something else to inspect for is traffic control, the terrain, locate your utilities, equipment locations. So here is just a good video of sometimes, young guys or new guys just want to jump right in and prove themselves, but sometimes that does not always work.
I took a job working in basically golf course construction, something that I hadn't dealt with before. Everything that I had been doing was not related to really the construction industry. I moved into a role where I was capable of doing everything, so it was more of a what needed to be done that day, but it was everything from running a shovel to driving a dump truck, running an excavator, running a bulldozer. We started that morning running a ditch from a pond that we had dug the previous summer. Everything started off according to plan before coffee break, and came back from coffee break and went back to work, and within 10 minutes the accident occurred.
Well, young workers are put into situations that I believe they don't fully understand the risks. Young workers show up on the job, first day, second day, 2 weeks into it. They want to prove to you that they're a good worker. They don't understand the risks or involved in the tasks that they're going to be doing. They jump in eagerly to get the job done. And also the employers sometimes put them into a situation that is at high risk without realizing the worker doesn't understand what's involved in that task.
During that day, I had been using the laser level, working with a fellow who was in the machine in front of me, and we'd been working together all day. There was a couple of other employees that had been working, bringing pipe over, and our boss was there. He was supervising, just making sure everything was going according to plan. And we all basically noticed at the same time that there was the one side of the bank looked a little bit unsteady. So I was actually in the process of getting out of the trench. Without even seeing it, the whole wall of the trench just came down. It was a few feet above me, and because I had my back turned, it basically got me on the back and the side, my right side, and the impact pushed me up against the other side of the trench and pinned me there. The guy who was running the machine, he took out 2 or 3 bucket loads right beside me, because it had me buried up to about my chest. I actually started to go blind. I was asking my boss was above me. He had actually given me mouth to mouth to bring me out of it, and he started to fade away on me, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. I was asking him, why can't I see? Why can't I see?
The very first thing that you want to do is make sure that they're trained, and to make sure that they understand what's expected of them in the workplace. The way that you can make that happen is to provide them with the proper training, the proper instruction, and then supervise them and make sure that what you're looking for is being carried out.
I was in induced coma for 10 days or 12 days. So I didn't even know what was going on really until a couple of weeks down the road. Meanwhile, everyone else, my family and everybody had been, through so much. The major injury was my pelvis. My pelvis was fractured in 6 different spots, and a couple of them were pretty serious, with bones breaking off and spinning around, and them having to go and basically retrieve them and put them back in their place. First time I remember seeing my dad, I woke up in CCU, critical care, and I thought, everything was okay, and I did, because of the numbness from the injury, everything, I didn't have a lot of pain. I just, when am I getting out of this place kind of thing? And my dad came and saw me, and he just basically broke down. Yeah, it was pretty tough on him, right? So my fiance had kept a diary, and about 2 months down the road, I read through the diary, and it was the first 2 weeks that I was in the hospital. I couldn't even get through it because, just seeing what she had gone through, it's pretty tough.
The people who work on a work site together, there's a tremendous kinship that's put together. So people get to know one another, they start to socialize with one another, and when somebody gets injured on the site, it can have such a huge negative impact on the other people that are working there.
It's been quite a price. I mean, it's been 9 months. It's been a very long 9 months. I still have time to go. I'm still walking with a crutch, and sometimes to try my best to walk without any, but it all depends on how my body feels that day. And I know that I would never put myself in that situation again. And I'm pretty confident that my employer wouldn't put someone in that situation again, because it's now had a huge impact on his life.
Oh my gosh, isn't that just so sad? Well, hopefully after this, you guys will be aware of all the hazards associated with working around trenches. And you know that cave-ins can occur suddenly, and they will happen, and can entrap, bury, injure, kill. Always use protective systems, and all employees should have a stop work authority. So if you guys ever have any questions, you can always reach out to us. All of my contact information is going to be at our booth, or you can always contact OSHA directly. So thank you so much, and I hope you are going to take some little bits of this back to work with you.